The Buzz with Jess Lujan.
We're back with main studio guest Senator Dennis Rodriguez Jr. We're talking about public-private partnership, especially as it applies to Guam Memorial Hospital. Senator, before the break, we're talking, of course, about paying for something and not even recouping the cost for what we paid for it. But let's, and nobody will argue that you got to make money. I mean, most people, you buy wholesale or retail, you got to sell it for more because that's how you make your money. You recoup that. But let's talk about this because you've been criticized by some of your colleagues that said, well, the RFP goes out. Their concern is that if a company or companies may come about and respond to the RFP, they're going to say they say that then the RFP will be written based on their assessment, and therefore, since they assessed it, they'll probably have the unfair advantage, and that the award be given to them. I mean, so how do you respond to your critics regarding that?
Yeah, well, I think some of these guys that make these criticism, I think they're trying to incite fear in the community, anger in the community. All they have to do is look at the challenges that our hospital faces for decades now, and so this process that we have now instituted is not an RFP, number one. It's a request for information. So it goes out there to the industry, goes out there and seeks information on these, it was initially 8 points. Now we've expanded it to about, I believe, 12 or 13 items that we're going to go out to the, to the public and ask for certain information. From that information, we come back as a community, as a government, and then it's not for sure we're going to go and move in this direction. If we see that the information will be beneficial to our hospital and to our people, that would now set the process of moving forward in that direction. But this idea that an RFI, this request for information, is meant to set it up for someone specific, I think it's being said out of ignorance. They don't know what the process is. We've talked to procurement experts. We've talked to to experts in the industry, in the community, and this is a process that's taken by the federal government and the private sector. When you have such a complex service or system that you want to see how you can improve that, this is the first step. And so this idea that it's set up for someone specific, I think it's wrong. It's a disservice to the community, to our people, and to top it off, they don't come up with any other solution.
Just pointing out, I mean, hey, this is what's going to happen if you do that. Now, the other criticism you have is that should an entity want to bid maybe down the line to partner up with GMH or the government of Guam for this, they'll say, hey, well, they're going to cherry pick on this because they're going to look at a profitable entity in the hospital and maybe bid for that, and then in that case, they'll bid out and say, hey, we'll run this department, we'll run this department, we'll run this, knowing that this makes money already. So the criticism is that if that's the case, they'll cherry pick, and the government of Guam then will be left with these entities, these departments that are not making money, that are hemorrhaging. And so you're still gonna wind up with the same thing, the money-making entity that would otherwise go to help fund the hospital. Now it's going to be privately run, and then the entities that have been hemorrhaging are going to continue to hemorrhage, and so we wouldn't have gotten anywhere.
That's right. And I've heard those criticism, and they're just simply wrong. I will never make that happen. I think setting it up for that scenario is counterproductive to what we're trying to achieve here. And so I think nobody, I think it's just that there's no trust anymore. Certain people make these statements, and want our people to get angry and frustrated. And believe me, Senator, that's not the intention at all. This initiative is to improve and help our hospital and our community. And who in their right mind would actually say, okay, we're going to do this, and we're going to take on the more losing battle, and not make it work. So it's just.
Well, I remember similar arguments because I remember going the 27th Guam legislature. We faced this. One of the first things we tackled was the privatization of GTA, and those arguments were
Sure.
similar arguments
Sure.
were placed forward. Oh, we're going to do this and that, and one of the reasons why GTA was privatized in that regard. And you're not looking at full privatization,
No,
you know, partnership.
sure, yeah.
But one of the arguments is that you're going to lose this and all that. But one of the reasons why was GTA just could not respond.
That's right.
I mean, you know, fast enough, because they were competing with private enterprise, and they couldn't. Now, private enterprise tomorrow can change the way things are with the procurement practices and all that. What the government red tape
Sure.
has to do, it just could not respond fast enough, and was losing a lot of customers to
Yeah.
private entities.
And, you know, I use that example. It's not the best example to use with GTA, but I do use
Sure.
it because you're right. I don't use it as, it's not a good example because with GTA it was a full
privatization,
It was
yeah,
outright
yeah.
sell,
Full outsell,
right?
yeah.
The government just got out of the business and said, private sector, you do it better, you do it. But look what happened there. The industry, there was competition. The services were
We have competition now.
yeah, services were improved. Our employees and people were taken care of, and so. With this scenario, it's to improve the delivery of healthcare in the hospital, but not to privatize. Number one, we can never do that. The Organic Act
does not permit
says
that.
that the ultimate delivery of healthcare in the hospital lies with the governor of Guam, and so we can never ever fully privatize or sell the hospital. You know, get that clear
Sure.
with these critics out there,
Sure,
right?
sure.
But this public-private partnership that is a potential, I truly believe in my heart that that's a way that we're going to improve our services at the hospital and really avoid these challenges that we've been facing for many, many years now. Because, you know, the government wants to do all these things and services for our people in the hospital setting. We just can't handle it. I mean, and we see it. So why not partner with those experts that you know that are able to handle and take care of it? And our role as a government is to make sure that our people will still have that access to that care.
Now, let me ask you this question, because when you do a public-private partnership and you're looking at a private partner may come in and alleviate some of this burden. If the hospital, if the government side is left with X amount of liability, you know, on an annual basis, and you come to that conclusion that annually this is what they're hemorrhaging, right? Okay. Now, if you do that, and are you looking also for a designated source of funding? And I'm just going to throw this out. I mean, this is just an example, okay? Say, for example, because we use it all the time, Section 30. If in fact that's it, and I'm not saying that it is, but if in fact the Section 30 money was identified as a designated source of funding for this, say, hey, every year the government will put out 20 million, whatever it is. Are you looking at, because it's often said again, the hospital needs to find its designated source of funding, its own funding, rather than here and here and here, which is what we do right now. Are you looking into that as well?
Absolutely, because you know, at the end of this RFI process, Senator, we may not, you know, things may come back and say, you know what, this is not going to be a good model for Guam, for GMH.
Sure.
So we go back to the drawing board and we look at, okay, if we're going to continue the status quo, and you're right, what is it that we're hemorrhaging? Is it 30 million a year, 40 million a year, 20 million a year that we're hemorrhaging? Us as a community, especially those critics that all they do is criticize, come to the table now and say, okay, this is what we need. How are we going to ensure that we can fund this the right way if we are, as a government, going to continue operating this hospital?
Well, especially the critics have committee oversight to say, hey, you know, why don't we put this together? Maybe this is a designated sort of funding. Maybe we can do this, and this entity, whatever it may be. But no, I mean, I'm glad of what you're doing. You know, it's a first step. It's definitely not the final step.
That's right.
It's the first step of this, and I'm glad, and you were able to do this, put together in less than a year. Again, your task force that put that together, and I applaud that, because I think even the organization that is made out of the executive branch, I think they're coming to similar conclusions. I mean, I think they're looking at phone systems and redoing that, but they also know that there are a lot of things out there that the unknowns, and you know, and I think they already. When I last read, that entity had looked at and said, hey, our findings are pretty much the same as already what you have done. So I'm saying, well, they already did